Alright, we are back with the Derek DLC. It's been a couple days since I read this, so let's get into it. Alright, awesome. Think about what you're in the mood for and let's get going. Together, you eagerly went back the way you came. This time you got in the car and drove out of Sunset Bird once more. Derek ordered from your preferred drive-thru and temporarily parked in the shade to pass out the goods. He handed you your drink and folded a paper bag with your food. You dug in immediately. Derek's ride was nice and still had a new car smell, but he had no problem with people eating in it. He shared his philosophy on the inevitably that lived in stuff is going to get dirty. He wasn't going to get mad about normal wear and tear. With a big family of busy boys and inability to keep things pristine certainly must have been an unavoidable fact of life for Derek. You and him enjoyed the meal. It was long finished when he pulled into the apartment's designated parking spot. With sunset dimmed down to inky blackness, it was hard to see. Derek switched on the interior car light as you gathered up the trash and the bags that dinner had come in. He led the way to his place, key in hand, and unlocked his door. Derek held it open for you instead of going through. You could have told someone he'd do that before ever it happened. That was second nature to Derek. He took a few steps in and flicked on the front light switch. Derek came in second and closed the door behind him. He walked further into the living room and flopped down on the couch. That was a successful day, a long, successful day. I feel like you've already been here for like a week and you got here this morning. Alright, I've really been all around. I'm glad to be back. I practically forgotten I don't live here. It was such a nice time. You nodded. We're gonna say we're glad to be back. Today was cemented why you had to come on this trip. You needed this. What a coincidence. I'm glad you're back too. Derek leaned his back as he thought. Tomorrow's going to be busy too. He raised his hand and counted each of the planned activities with a finger. Groceries, taking the bros out, and then Father's Day thing. It'll be great. I'm already tired again just hearing it. I also want to get something gift-wise for Father's Day. Also want to get something card-wise for Father's Day. You gave a thumbs up. I'm already tired just hearing it. I don't want to give his dad a gift. You yawned, not completely on purpose. Your eyes had started drooping on the drive back. Hopefully, you would be able to sleep well tonight because you were sincerely needed to recharge your batteries before the next series of events. Derek blinked sleepily, sinking further into the couch. He looked cozy. He shook himself and suddenly clapped his hands together. But hey, you probably want to shower and settle in for real before it gets even later. He grabbed the back of the couch and hauled himself to his feet. We can always work on the schedule when we're not sweaty and exhausted, but that's the best. Sorry. I'm downloading WoW. I didn't realize you could pre-play it. Oh shit, it's ready. But that's the best time to play things. Derek exhaled sharply at your joke and you smiled. Yeah, I'll go gladly take your hot water. Bye, Derek. Derek waved you off as you returned to the guest room. You got out of your stuff, put your toiletries in the bathroom, and showered. You tried to be quick and were soon in your pajamas, winding down for the night. Once again, you were back in your room. You plugged in your phone charger. You plugged your phone in the charger and unpacked tomorrow's clothes. A knock rattled your door. Can I come in? Yeah.
Thanks.
Derek accepted your invitation and shut the door behind him after he walked in. What's up, gal? What's up yourself? You sat on the bed and patted the spot next to you. You sat down on the bed for the conversation. You went over there. We're gonna go over the Derek. You shut your suitcase and stood up. A few strides quickly bridged the gap between you and Derek. He grinned boyishly at you. Everything good in here? Yep, definitely. I've triple checked that I brought everything. It looks like I forgot my wallet, you joked. I forgot to pack shampoo and conditioner. It is, thanks for asking. You smiled at him in response. We're gonna tell him it is, thanks for asking. Yeah, of course, I'm glad it's going well. Derek stretched his arms above his head and yawned. Despite his sleepiness, he remained upbeat. Rather than seeming done with the conversation, he appeared to be mulling something over, probably what to say next. He wasn't being responsible and going to bed early. You didn't mind, though. This was your first day back together, and there was no need to rush it. And a spark came to his eyes, inspiration striking him. He instinctively leaned closer to you, bringing your faces almost nose to nose. Nori, while you're here, we should go to a water park. There's one a ways away, but it'd be so worth it. He eagerly continued to lay out his thought process, but we haven't done something like that since the fucking boardwalk. And I totally misclicked and we skipped that part. If we tried it, we could keep it just you and me. Obviously, there's not a chance tomorrow, so how about the day after that? We could get there first thing, spend the afternoon together, and get going before it gets late? He paused and took a hopeful breath, all of his attention focused on your reaction. So, what do you think? You gave a thumbs up? Well, alright, I'll be willing to give it a try. That's perfect. I'd love to go. That's perfect. I don't like water, but like outside water, not at all. Excuse me. A water park was such a good summer kind of thing to do. He looks forward to Derek finally taking you. Derek's smile widened and you could tell he was already mentally planning how the adventure would go. It sort of felt like you being asked out on a date in a roundabout, indirect manner that could go either way depending on however you wanted to take it. Textbook Derek. You had been hoping that he might ask you on a real date. You didn't want things to change. It was a relief that Derek didn't put you on the spot. We are grown, and we were kind of hoping that he would ask us on a real date, because why not? We understood he was keeping it vague. He would never want to make things awkward, but it would be nice to hear him say it out loud that he wanted to be a date. If he had to move, there would be absolutely no complaints from you. With absolutely no further prompting. He winked. Since I'm finally saying this, I might as well admit the rest. I thought about inviting you to a water park before, and not only the water park. There were a lot of places I wanted to take you when we lived closer to each other. There was always a reason not to. I was busy, you were probably busy, or maybe you wouldn't like my idea and all that.
That's what I thought.
He dropped his gaze and shrugged. You waited for him to rally, to turn it around. You could picture him saying something positive, maybe better late than never, or being glad that he finally did it. But as the silence continued, no silver lining came. He had failed in his past endeavors, and that was it. No one spoke, and the awkwardness began to press on you. But Derek brightened his voice, unwilling to let it linger any longer. Well, it's late. I shouldn't keep you up. I'll see you tomorrow, bright and early, and we should plan to leave the apartment around 8 for shopping. Everything's close enough that we can walk, but if that's alright. Okay.
Good night.
Good night, Derek. Don't let the bedbugs bite. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. You hummed. Alright, good night. I'm looking forward to it. Derek nodded and left the room without another word, leaving you alone. After all of what you had earned your exhaustion, you were at your limit, too sleepy to do anything else. You flicked the light switch and went straight to bed. You woke up the next morning in an unfamiliar but awfully comfortable bed. The sheets smelled of unknown laundry detergent. You slowly absorbed your surroundings. This was Derek's place, wasn't it? And you were on schedule. You groaned and rolled over to check the clock on the side table. You slept in, you needed to hurry, you had woke up with plenty of time. It was hours before you had to leave. It was hours before we had to leave. But going back to sleep wasn't happening. You slipped out of bed and casually got yourself ready. Soon you wandered into the living room. Your mind drifted back to what Derek said last night. It was a heavy admission from him, his lack of confidence to reach out to you. You didn't want to dwell on it. It was a big day for the entire Suarez family, and you didn't want to rain on their parade just because you were aware that it used to flood in the past. Derek would bring it up if he wanted to talk more about it, but until then, you would let it lie. The man of your mind was there when you left the hall. Derek was fully dressed, a gym bag under his arms, and leaning over the kitchen counter with the pen in his hand.
Morning.
Oh, good morning, Nori. He stretched backward and settled into a more upright position. I'm heading to the gym. You might have been able to guess. I'm going to leave a note in case you weren't up yet. Ah. He smiled at his consideration. He could have just texted you, but he probably would have worried about disturbing you. Making physical notes was an old habit of his. I'm going to be back by 7:30 if that's... Oh, thank God he's not pressing us to go to the gym. Can I go too? I want to work out. Can I come along to hang out? Cool, I have a game to play, so I'll be entertained. Sure, I have something to read until you get back. Can we come and hang out?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, grab anything you need and we can go. You excitedly run back to your room and gather whatever you thought would be useful. You packed it in an extra pack that you had brought along as a part of your luggage. After that, you went down to the complex's gym. You kept Derek company as he exercised, chatting and cheering along the way. He put in several reps of most of the standard exercises. You clapped when he added more weight and then stood privately in awe at how much this man could lift. It all went by fast and soon Derek finished up. Derek took a quick shower and the two of you left the apartment to run your errands before the day could even start. Derek picked the most direct path to the nearby grocery store. Around you the city bustled as people tried to get to work. Cars lined in the streets and people hurried in various buildings. It took you approximately 10 minutes to reach the automatic doors of the store and step into the air conditioning. Various displays tried to sell you on all Father's Day deals. There wasn't much about it that set this one apart from the one in your old town. We're probably going to need a cart. He pulled one out with a smooth movement. It was a slight squeaky wheel.
Let's get to
There, we're ready to go. He leaned over the handle like he was at the start of a kart race, waiting for the shot to go off. So, what protein do you want? That's a good question. At that point in your life, you were a vegetarian, a vegan, a pescatarian, a pollitarian, a selective eater, not picky, and ate almost a. We're a selective eater. That was something Derek was already aware of, but he couldn't make an entire meal plan for you. We can start cooking at home for some of your meals, though. A lot of what we'll eat today will probably still be from my parents' house or restaurants. I'd say we only need 2 or 3 packs of
What do you
things.
think?
I'm thinking chicken, sausage, and eggs, but you can get something else. I want to make sure there's stuff you want to eat. You inspected your surroundings and thought about what you wanted. Okay, you want beef, you want pork, bacon, lamb, turkey, salmon, beans, lentils, tofu, shrimp. We want beans, and then we want turkey. That was all. That'll work. Great. Alright, let's also grab some vegetables to go with that and some rice or whatever. We need a pineapple. Sure, that's the plan. We can grab some granola. What about oatmeal too? We should get a jug of lemonade. Let's remember to check the discount. Let's get pineapple. Derek brightened and bounced on the balls of his feet. You're a genius. Better than that. You're an expert on me specifically. From there, you continued with your purpose browsing. Derek speed walked with the cart. He kept things moving but wasn't rushing you either. It was nearly as leisurely as when you'd first shopped with him. Neither of you were in a rush and appreciated the company. However, as adults, the atmosphere between you was markedly different. Before, you had investigated the store as if every shelf could hold buried treasure. Now the items took little attention, and you spent more energy absorbing each other's presence. Grocery shopping was more of a chore and less of an experience. However, even chores weren't bad with Derek. You both debated brands, helped spot elusive items, and encouraged each other to get what you wanted. If one of you hesitated over something, the other one would compel the other to treat themselves. Mutual decisions were praised for good taste, and strange selections were jokingly critiqued. It was the best visit to the grocery store you've had in ages. After getting all the goods, you went through the self-checkout to pay for it all. Derek scanned and you bagged until everything was put away and paid for. The first part of the shopping trip was over. Now you had to carry it all back on one foot. Derek loaded himself up with supplies eagerly. It was nice seeing him in a good mood. I didn't think about how we would have to walk back with this stuff. You normally carry. I didn't think about how we'd have to walk back with this stuff. I didn't. Derek was highly amused at your lack of forethought. Walking with extra weight is a bonus. Well then, boy, you do it all. He continued to grab the bags without asking you to help. It soon became obvious that he intended to carry all of them. You waited for Derek to finish. You heard and snatched a few bags before he could. I'll let him do it. You weren't going to argue with him when he wanted the extra arm exercise. While you hadn't questioned his biceps before, now you had more insight how he maintained them. You retraced the path back to the apartment, crossing through the crowded streets with bundles of groceries. The pace was brisk. The two of you had places to be and people to see. As soon as you returned, Derek dumped the bags on the counter. He turned his head over his shoulder to face you. We could just put the cold stuff in the fridge and leave the rest. We gotta go soon. Where in the fridge? Wherever you'll remember it being. What stage organizational advice? You nodded along with Derek's enthusiasm. Let's do it. With confident determination, the two of you tore through the bags in search of the goods that needed to stay chilled. With the team effort, it only took a couple of minutes to put the groceries away safely. Nice work, Nori. He offered you a triumph high five. He gave you his hand a loud. You gave his hand a loud smack. And nothing's stopping us. We can actually eat some of these groceries we got immediately, if not sooner. Given the ticking clock, you had a fast and simple breakfast. While it wasn't fancy, it satisfies your appetite and would fuel you throughout the day. When you were done, Derek placed the dirty dishes in the sink. He gave them a light rinse and wiped his hands. We gotta go. The bros are waiting. In short order, you exited the apartment. As you would be staying out longer, Derek was more cautious leaving his place. Derek double-checked the door that he locked and went to his car. You jumped in the passenger seat and buckled your seatbelt. Derek started the ignition and checked behind him before he easily pulled out of the spot. George texted me and said he was already at Mom and Dad's place. He's gonna leave his car there, and then you, me, him, and Nico will all go on mine. It'd be too much of an extra hassle to make George drive behind us. He grinned cheekily without an annoying glance. But I did already tell him that you had dibs on shotgun. Hope your brothers aren't mad about that. Does George normally get shotgun? You didn't have to do that. You're a champ. Thank you. You're a champ.
You know it.
I am happy to use my eldest brother powers for you. Derek was bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. His focus stayed on the road. He boldly navigated through the packed streets, his entire demeanor screaming familiarity with this drive. The sounds of traffic droned on, making it easy to zone out. You hadn't even noticed the conversation I completely dropped off until Derek spoke up with a question. What do you think of the gym? It was cool having you around. I had a good time. I don't care about gyms. I want to spend more time with you. My normal gym's better, but the gym doesn't have you. I was very impressed with. I don't care about gyms personally. I want to spend more time with you. Well, I'm glad you came. The car slid to a stop as the traffic light turned red. Derek put a hand to his heart. What do you think we'll do today? What's your workout schedule? You quietly looked at the window. What do you think we'll do today? It's a mystery. Well, sorta. George would probably want to go see a game. If there's anything good happening other than that, he'd probably pick whatever's current at the movies. But it's Nico controlling today's activities, and he has a very distinctive style. Expect him to pick what we usually don't do, so it could be almost anything. He listened to him with interest as he chatted about the previous Nico misadventures. The bee farm in particular sounded inspired. Derek turned into the same parking lot from the day before you arrived at the Suarez's household. You both got out the car and walked up to the door in the complex. It swung open before Derek could knock. Derek took a step back, not expecting it. George grinned from the doorway and welcomed you both inside. Hey, bro.
Back.
George fist bumped his brother, each of them excited. Hey, George, what's up? You know, life. He led you further into the condo. Nicholas was lounging on the couch. He twisted around to face you.
You're here!
Nicholas cheered and threw his hands up in the air. He hopped off the cushion, bouncing to his feet. He ran to the entryway, immediately going to Derek. Of course, we wouldn't miss it. You noticed Mr. and Mrs. Suarez cleaning up in the kitchen. They must have finished breakfast themselves. You know— oh. Oh, looks like we have company. Welcome, it's nice to see you two. Derek nodded and his mom turned around to put a jar of strawberry jam into the refrigerator. Hello, Derek. Good morning, Nori. How was your drive? Hi, Dad. Your drive was the same as usual, but forget about that. Derek lit up in the anticipation and beamed. Happy Father's Day. Yeah, happy Father's Day. Mrs. Suarez patted her husband on the back and he puffed full proud dad mode. Thank you. Oh, and my mom said happy Father's Day too. He directed his attention towards you. Thank you again. It's a wonderful day already. Derek observed contentedly before glancing over his brothers. George had pulled out his phone at some point and Nicholas absent-mindedly fiddled with his hair clips. You two ready to go?
Yeah!
I was born ready. With that zealous claim, Nicholas was suddenly all fired up. George crossed his arm, decidedly not as energetic. I'm not that level already, but I can manage leaving now. Do you need anything, Nori? Nope. Alright, then let's go.
Are you sure?
No one needs to go potty. Mrs. Suarez poked her head into the conversation, her expression too innocent. All three of her sons slumped their shoulders inside. Yes, Mom.
Yes, Mom.
Yes, Mom. Yes, Mom. Perfect. You clapped your hands together and the boys relaxed, all showing different degrees of amusement.
Have a good one.
Have fun, and we'll see you this evening.
Goodbye. Talk to you later.
See you tonight. We'll be there. Now let's roll out. Derek led the way after waving to his parents. He held the door for you and his brothers. Outside, he unlocked the car and it beeped. George and Nicholas beelined for the vehicle. George initially went for the passenger seat before catching himself and opening the back door. Nicholas barreled into the back seat without hesitation. You and Derek got in the car, completing the seating arrangement that Derek had discussed prior. As Derek turned the key in the ignition, it struck you that the last time you had been out for an outing with the only four of you was when you'd been the boys' babysitter. Now, George was an actual adult and Nicholas wasn't that far behind him. It was surreal, thinking about how much had changed over the years. Everyone had grown up. You wondered how Nicholas and George felt about hanging out with big kids as equals. Derek cranked up the AC but kept the car in park. He leaned his head back.
What's up?
So, Nico, where am I going? The youngest leaned forward, sticking his head through the gap between the car's front seats. I want to go to the Zake. It's a bakery. Derek raised his eyebrows and exchanged a look with George. Oh, that is a surprise. Even more of one than I had figured. You're not a fan of cakes and cupcakes and all this things sugary? Yeah, I thought you read all that. George's tone was more teasing than Derek's, dry with mock skepticism. Nicholas rolled his eyes. I did. Most desserts are totally inedible. This place is different. The owner's cool, and we should support local businesses. They've got vegan and gluten-free options and other stuff too. Now, can we get over there? Later, get some more stuff will be sold out. Bring it up on your phone. It should be 20 minutes from here. Derek chuckled, but chose not to comment on all the defensive explanations. Your wish is my command. Thank you. Nicholas smiled sweeter than his dessert preferences. Derek brought out his phone and typed in Zake in the maps program. Nothing obvious turned up. Nicholas snorted, still poking his head towards the front of the car. Try an X, not a Z.
I got you.
Gotcha. Derek corrected his spelling and then tapped the first result. It was open, averagely busy, and estimated 22 minutes away. Now, buckle up. Nicholas flung himself backwards and settled in his seat. Derek waited for him to click. his seatbelt before shifting the car into reverse. George had been buckled in since his brother had started the car, and you weren't far behind. You wondered if it was normal for Nicholas to need a reminder. The directions chimed in over the speaker to head east. Derek shook his head. Let me escape the parking lot first. He muttered to the mapping program as it kept giving him unhelpful instructions. Once he reached the road, it finally stopped complaining about Derek's twists and turns. George drew one of his legs up and leaned against the car door, getting comfy. If we knew we were going to go somewhere at the bakery, we could have gone to the grocery store. Think about the convenience.
Oh.
Come on, bro. We got a car now. We can have higher standards in the grocery store's bakery section. George laughed at him and doubled down. I still would have picked a normal supermarket. It's a classic. Derek grinned as he flicked his turn signal on. Most of his attention was on the stoplight in front of him, but he still took the opportunity to banter. Sorry, George. Nora and I went to the grocery store today without you. Already? Yeah, I was out of everything, basically. Shoot, we missed out then. George closed his eyelids and tightly hummed and thought. Remember back when Nicholas insisted on using his allowance on a carton of eggs so he could see if cooking them on the sidewalk worked? Yeah, I also remember all the raw egg puddles and eating scrambled eggs for breakfast and dinner. Nicholas shrugged, his shoulders high, justified but hiding his embarrassment. Inquiring minds had to know. And it was more exciting than getting an apple. George's eyes narrowed, openly judging his little brother. I want to eat an apple, and I did. My purchase led to zero regret, unlike your science experiment. Hey, did you two do the things where you stuck your hands in the veggie mess? Cracking eggs in the ground is an even bigger mess than that pie fight. George is still borgy. I tried the egg thing too when I was a kid. I always wanted to try frying an egg on the street. An apple a day keeps that. I always wanted to try frying an egg on the street. Nicholas' seatbelt strained against him, leaning forward. You get it. It felt hot enough that summer that it should have worked. It was well worth checking. I still think there has to be a way to do it. The lively discussion continued through the drive. About 20 minutes later, the GPS chimed that the destination was on the right. Derek turned into the packed row of shops. Above one of them, a bright pink sign with electrified swirled letters proclaimed itself as Zake. It grabbed your attention, standing out amongst the more sedate signs around it. Nicholas shimmied in his seat. Derek found a parking place along the street and carefully paralleled parked. Enough cars zoomed past on the street, and then Derek and Nicholas didn't feel the safe opening their car doors. You and George got out first and waited on the sidewalk for the two to crawl through. Nicholas stifled his laughter as he watched Derek contort himself over his gear shift. The spot had a meter, so Derek paid for 30 minutes worth of parking. We should be in and out, right? You're not planning to have a whole meal here. Definitely not. Then that'll work. Despite the minor bumps getting here, all the boys were visibly thrilled. You were delighted. Nicholas fussed with his hair and readjusted his romper. Once he had straightened it back out, he nodded at George, who had waited by him. Derek marched ahead of the pack, and you were certain that he was going to hold Zake's door open for everyone. You treasured his gallantry. You rushed ahead to open it first. We treasured it. He truly was considerate. You felt warm inside when he took a hold of the handle and pushed it forward. He held it wide and waited for you and his little brothers to pass. Nicholas skipped on by with George not far behind him. You followed them, but turned to Derek on the way. I thank you, noble Derek. You continued in, and Derek was only a step behind you. The swing of the door as it closed jingled a springly bell. It set the tone of the place immediately, a classy yet cozy atmosphere that was full of bursting with warm and inviting scents. In most everything was some shade of pink or cream. If the owner could have made the green leaves of live plants around the room a delicate baby pink instead, you didn't doubt they would have. The four of you went over and clustered together near the front shop. Today's freshly made confection sat in perfectly aligned rows in a glass display. Each had its own paper dolly doily underneath. No other customers were inside at the time, but you weren't alone for more than a minute. The bell had announced your arrival, and the sound drew out someone from the back. They blended in with the store's style so exactly. It had to be intentional. Their softly pointed face was painted with expertly applied makeup that could rival the pristine details of the cakes in offer. That was framed by a few strands of shoulder-length pastel pink hair. The rest of it was propped into a fancy updo with floral accessories. As glamorous as the employee was, they weren't too good for a homey apron to protect their pretty clothes from messy behind-the-scenes work that lovely baked treats demanded. A shiny purple button on the strap had their pronouns printed out in black letters, they, them. They greeted the small crowd with a gentle, amiable tone. Welcome to Zake. Thanks for coming by. My name's Xavier, the head baker, and I own the shop too.
Hey.
Sup, Xavier? His reply was familiar to the point of being flippant. Nico wasn't even looking at them when he said it. He leaned lower and began perusing. Is this Xavier from the boardwalk? Who was painting us? Perusing the daily selections up close. Hello, Nico. Your patronage is always appreciated. With the personal greetings between the two, Xavier looked over to the rest of your gang with a friendly smile. It's good to see you again, too. Eric's usual conversationalist skills failed him. He was loath to embarrass another person by pointing out the little fact that they weren't seeing each other again. A total stall in the exchange was avoided thanks to the fact that George didn't have the same reservations. He could speak far more frankly. We've never been here before, only Nico though. Maybe Nori has? I can't speak for her. Sorry, y'all. He raised an eyebrow while glancing your way. He paused a small correction to let you contribute your side concerning the bakery. You shook your head at the possibility of this being a repeat spot for you. As far as you knew, Zake didn't even exist the last time you were here in the city. Not me either. I've never seen this place. That's what I thought. You don't know us. Xavier's grin was undaunted. That might have been a customer service skill, but Nicholas, snickering mischievously in the background, gave away that something else was likely the reason for their calm reaction to George's directness. You Sorrows brothers may not have been all together in my bakery before, but we certainly have already met more than once. 4 eyes went wide and 2 mouths grimaced at the same time in the same way. Xavier spoke so surely and plainly. Derek and George flipped instantly from viewing them as a stranger to embarrassment over forgetting someone they should have known. And Nori, was it? I think we might have been acquainted too. It suddenly hit you what they meant. That made you curious. You eagerly waited to find out more. You were skeptical. Maybe it was a joke, Nico. Your face was perfect. Yeah, we knew where we saw them. In the far reaches of your mind, you were lived sitting uncomfortably in a cheap plastic chair and staring straight into the purple-brown eyes for much longer than you reasonably would with a stranger. But there was a special exception for them because they were hard at working painting a shooting star on your cheek. 2 of the 3 brothers transparently inspected Xavier up and down, trying to put together how they might have met the mysterious baker who claimed to know them. Meanwhile, the youngest of them pretended that he was still scrutinizing the desserts. But unless they had jokes hidden in the frosting, Nicholas's highly amused smirk reflected in the glass revealed that he was fully engaged in the conversation happening above him. You and Nicholas were on the same page, as you were also observing the scene with amusement. It wasn't your story, so you patiently kept quiet about the reveal you already knew was coming. George tilted his head from one side to the other and crossed his arms. Derek subconsciously scratched the side of his face at the awkward turn this had taken. Sorry, I'm blanking on you. Who are you? How did we meet? Xavier's eyes fluttered closed as they primly straightened their apron. I apologize. Nicholas, with his hair clips and wild locks, is very recognizable. He hasn't changed at all. If I only saw one of you as an adult in isolation, I doubt I would have realized who you were either. As adults, at one point jumped out of George so distinctly he spoke it back to Xavier as if he was Nicholas mimicking Derek. Exactly. The last time we saw each other, you were at least 2 feet shorter. Xavier hovered their flattered fingers in front of them, like they were resting on a counter roughly around 4 feet high as a visual demonstration. They progressively lifted their hand up until their palm was high enough that it could have sat on top of a fully grown George's head if it was closer, utilizing their tiptoes as necessary for the feat. I've always had an artist's soul, but my medium wasn't always a decorative pastries. My first job straight out of high school was painting faces at the big boardwalk park. Derek's face went alight with a flash of recognition. The fingers that had been scraping his skin twitched that started to searchingly press along the length of his cheek, as though he painted a rainbow might have suddenly appeared there. George slapped his hand against his forehead. It all had become so obvious to him. The trio of excitable yet well-behaved brothers who would come by a few times a year were some of my favorite customers. Xavier quite literally didn't forget about you either, and they shifted their gaze the rest on you. And I'm relatively sure one time the boys brought friends with them, and that one of those friends was you. A huge childlike grin filled out Derek's face. He looked no different than he did all these years when you first met Xavier, massive muscles aside. You're spot on. One time Nori and her older sister came with us and we all stopped by your face painting stall. I can't believe we met again and like this in a bakery of all things. It's awesome. Derek resolved to restart the interaction on the right foot, and he finally gave a greeting of his own to Xavier. Hi again, Xavier, the artist. The middle brother followed the eldest brother's examples and offered to reprise his original statement.
Oh.
Okay, good to see you again, too. You chuckled, you shrugged nonchalantly. Small world, Xavier, this is so cool. Small world, Xavier. Xavier was just tickled by the reception. The visit was going to be worth it for them if he walked away without purchasing a single slice of cake. At some point, Nicholas had stopped eyeballing the pastries and leaned coolly against the counter. He also finally rejoined the conversation instead of existing as an entertained audience member. Told you the owner was cool. Well, thank you for talking me up, Nicholas. Now that we're all reacquainted, is there anything I can do for you? Nico slipped his hands into his pocket, staying totally chill. We'll probably just get a couple things to go. I want... he paused to squint down over his shoulder at the treats one more time. Get me an eclair and a cup of water too. Will do. Anything else? They surveyed the other three people in the room as they asked the question and waited for a response. George approached his only little brother at the front display, shooting him a weary smile upon his arrival. But then he quite seriously considered what was available. I'll have a blueberry muffin, the one in the middle and on the left, but my left looks like it has the most berries. Xavier gave two quick nods. Their hands were already busy putting together a box for Nico's selected pastry. Derek, however, stayed back, and his focus went to you rather than the baker or their wares.
Ready?
What are you thinking? I'm gonna pass. I don't feel like getting something. Why not try something new? I'm not sure. I'll get a better look at them. It's mainly a cake shop. I'm gonna get some cake. Why not try something new? Yeah, but thanks. I can claim a bite off Nico's or George's. That's enough for me. Maybe I could try yours if you want any. I'm not sure. I'll get a better look at them. Cool. You joined the other Sarez brothers and contemplated what, if any, traits to pick out for yourself. Up close, you noticed that there were tiny handwritten signs in front of the options. They declared what flavor each quaint confection was in pretty looping letters. The variety was somewhat limited, but those likely weren't the only things the bakery ever had available. They were simply what was made for that day. You decided you wanted a slice of vanilla cake, chocolate cake, strawberry cake, Neapolitan cake, raspberry lemon, that sounds good, a blueberry muffin, a chocolate chip, a brownie and eclair, a slice of raspberry lemon cake. You heard Derek come up behind you. You didn't have to look to guess that he was trying to figure out what caught your eye. You eagerly pointed out the prize dessert.
Nice.
Looks good. Xavier, I like the raspberry lemon cake. Absolutely. And that's everything? Two packed and prepped boxes were sitting side by side as Xavier reached behind them for the third. Should be. Nicholas and George both gave a thumbs up to confirm that we were all taken care of. The answer caused a faint confusion from Xavier. So you're not getting anything, Derek? Nico? That kind of teasing with someone other than another Sarez caught you entirely by surprise, but Nicholas was able to quip back with ease. Maybe I would have, but Derek isn't getting anything. You'd lose out on a sale if I copied that. Good point. You don't need to do that. Hey, why don't you be the one to pick out something for him instead? No thanks.
Sorry.
That's not how this works. It was worth a shot. The two chuckled good-naturedly. Let me ring you up. Those were the magic words to draw Derek fully out to over to the front. He came to the spot right across from the register. It didn't go unnoticed.
Derek?
You're the only one who didn't get anything. You shouldn't pay. Nico snapped his head around with a look of true offense at what had gone on behind his back. He folded his arms disapprovingly, catching Derek with his hands in the metaphorical cookie jar. Or rather, putting his cookies in someone else's jar.
What?
Derek made a look of fox surprise that gave Xavier's response to Nicholas's non-mimic decision, making a run for its money with a scoff of played-up disbelief. You can't take away my oldest child privilege of treating my little brothers. And Nori is my guest. Why wouldn't I pick up the tab for her? The middle and the youngest Sarezas shared concerned glances with one another, their brows knit and their frowns salty. However, their brotherly nonverbal communication gradually softened their expressions. Their eyes carried the message they needed, and soon they were shrugging in acceptance. Derek gave a big winning grin and pulled out his awaited wallet. He was forever their big brother after all. You pulled out your wallet regardless. You accepted his generosity. What a gentleman. I'm still paying for me, even if you're covering them. Thank you. We're gonna pull out our wallet regardless.
Whatever works.
Oh, alright. Don't let me get in your way. The treats were paid for, and Xavier carefully passed over the crisp white boxes to the rightful owners. The Zake logo was printed in, and of course the pink ink across the top flaps. They also handed over a cup of water for Nicholas. Thank you for your lovely patronage. Have a wonderful day. Derek, George, and Nicholas each Each gave a cheery goodbye and began to walk out of the group. You gave a wave and turned to leave with them. Thank you too. Bye. Your group's first stop of the day was completed in a sweetly satisfying way. Everyone's got back into their car, same seats as before. No one had even put their seatbelt on before George asked a very reasonable question. What are we doing now? Derek checked the back seat through the mirror. Yeah, what now, Nico? Nicholas crossed his arms behind his head, thoughtfully staring out the window. All eyes stayed on today's decision maker. He considered long and hard in the hot car about how to use his power. In the end, he went for his old default. The teen leaned all the way over and popped his head through the gap between the two front seats. He glanced back and forth between you two and Derek with one fuzzy brow arched. What did people do when you were teens? What? Way to make us sound ancient. We're 23. You merely shrugged. You dropped your head with a heavy sigh. Nico wants to do what Derek did. What a surprise. We aren't old. Nicholas is a little baby. Darn kids these days, he joked. We're not over the hill yet. You dropped your head with a heavy sigh. Nico was unapologetic over his phrasing. He smirked and pressed again. I mean it. What was the place to be when you weren't babysitting me and George? Derek tapped a finger against the steering wheel. I remember the mall being super cool when I was still in school, but that started out to die out, didn't it?
What?
The mall, really? Sparkles began to twinkle in Nicholas's eyes like a twilight sky. George shrugged a single shoulder, buckling himself in for the ride. I've only ever gone there with Mom to get some new clothes. I don't remember it being better than any other store, but if that's what Nico wants to do, I don't mind.
Oh.
Nicholas launched himself backwards and bounced in the seat. He stayed still just as long enough to lock himself in the seatbelt.
Let's get to
The
it.
mall it is. The two more clicks followed you and Derek put your seatbelts on. Derek pulled out and you were on the road once more. The drive was spent with Derek trying and failing to remember all the stores that used to be in the county mall. He listed off several, but he had no idea how many were still open in the year of 2021, or if they were even real store names, or if he was mixing words up. His little brothers reveled in the laugh-inducing, floundering explanation of the magical mall of his youth. They took bets on how many of the shops they'd actually see when they got there. George guessed about 3 of them would still be there if they ever existed. Nicholas declared that every single one of them were there, even the ones that definitely sounded made up. Derek, reasonable as always, went down the middle with his own recollection and guessed that you'd be able to find half of them there. You announced that Derek wouldn't be right about any of them. You agreed with Derek, you agreed with Nicholas, you agreed with George, you agreed with Nicholas. Nicholas cheered as the truth fate. When you rolled into the county's mall expansive parking lot, Derek was able to get a parking spot without any trouble. There was rows and rows of cracked and oil-stained slots that only a single or two were there already. Just as Derek thought, the location had lost most of its popularity as the years went on. It was at least convenient for your needs. It was probably the only place in the city where the parking wasn't jam-packed. The 4 of you filed out the car, crossed the lot, and passed through the towering front doors. The interior of the place had a slight uncanny feeling. You had never stepped foot there before, and the massive scale paired with the total lack of people filling it made you feel as if you weren't supposed to be in that place. Well, here we go. Take it in.
Wow.
Wow. You wandered up and down the wide, mostly empty halls, pointing out the stores Derek had named, or almost named, along the way. It was a game of I Spy. The younger brothers were quite entertained just by that. They led the pack to get the first look at whatever was ahead. Derek and you lingered behind and gave the appropriate reactions whenever one of the boys shouted out a store name that matched Derek's recollection or one that he had failed to know. The two laughed and waved back while you cheered and booed up at them. When you neared the end of the aisle, there was a break in the store's names that could be announced. Derek used that moment to whisper a joking remark. Feels like we're babysitting again, huh? Yep, our precious big babies. He winked and picked up the pace. Nico and George had drifted further away from his watchful eye, and the responsible babysitter couldn't let that happen. The group arrived at the crossroads of the mall, where 3 separate halls of the stores converged in the middle. Without the boisterousness of Nicholas and George to fill the space, the sounds of the footsteps echoed much louder. Derek's expression twisted and drooped bittersweetly, looking at the space. Being here now, it's not the same. Then his focus came onto his brothers, and his face snapped back to its usual optimism. Do you guys actually want to go in any of these stores? His little brothers both turned around to stare wide-eyed at their elder. Nicholas and George were genuinely taken by surprise at the idea of behaving as regular customers. They were visiting as sightseers of an archaeological site from times long gone. Nico blinked rapidly to hydrate his eyeballs after keeping them open for so long. Then his expression slipped into an easy grin, and he put his hands on his hips. Yeah, I'll try it. He scanned the rows and rows of stores with new, refreshed eyes. A target was quickly acquired. Nicholas pointed out, stretched a hand at a black-walled skater shop. I want to look at that one. George had come to face an entirely different direction. He had mulled over the suggestion silently and was gazing with consideration at a bookstore with huge glass windows that showed off not only the books on sale but other wares like board games and figurines. The unspoken difference of opinion didn't escape Derek's attention. He spoke with full authority, truly dusting off those old babysitter instincts. Hey, this doesn't mean I want you guys going off on your own. You're not little kids, but we're here to be together, and there's time to see more than one place. We'll take turns. Okay. Automatically and obediently, George and Nicholas replied in unison. They were good kids. Is there someplace you or Nori want to go to? Derek didn't hesitate. He jerked a thumb over his shoulder at the video game shop. That's what I want to check out. Nori? All three Sarah's brothers watched you questioningly, each wondering what the same thing. It was hard to say without knowing for sure what the options even were, but luckily this intersection had a handy 8-foot tall map that was emblazoned, I don't know what that word, with easy to follow categories and lists of store names. It was a veritable cheat sheet for the little game, and you were glad the two younger boys found stores they wanted without needing to peek at it. There was nothing wrong with you having some extra insight, though you read over everything that laid out a significant amount of stores sold food. You just left the bakery, and should be eating with the rest of the family pretty soon. So you decided again against all those. Beyond that, there were tons of chain stores with varied standard types of products. Do you mind the makeup store? How about the art supply? What about the perfume and candle store? I'm gonna visit a clothing store over here. Let's go to the camping. Let's do clothes. I can get behind that. Derek nodded his head formally, but paired it with a cheery grin. You've got a plan. The group checked out the game store, everyone went to the bookstore, you all headed into the skater shop. Let's go to the skater shop. Your group crowded into Nicholas's choice of store. Aggressive rock music played with the graphic tee covered the wall. It was small and cramped, making it impossible for people to navigate between the displays together. Derek and George were filtered through the narrow spaces on one side of the shop, and you and Nicholas were on the other. Claustrophobic atmosphere didn't faze Nico. His lackadaisically surveyed the scene, stopping only when he came across a shelf of slip-on shoes. Nicholas lifted a checkered shoe off the rack and weighed it in his hand. By the intrigued rise of his brows, you got the impression you would be in this spot for a while. You stayed quiet, not wanting to interrupt. I was just wondering, how are you doing lately? Have you gotten into skateboarding? Do you have a favorite class you were taking this summer? So how's school? We're just gonna stay quiet. Sometimes you don't need to talk, you only say nothing. He tilted his head back and forth, his long strands of hair swaying gently across his face. I'd look good in this, right? Definitely. Yeah, too bad it's $80. That's not gonna be happening. Oh, good point. Nicholas let out a long, contented breath. He was fully at ease with the world. It is wild that you're literally just there and talking to me. He was so much like Derek, even when he wasn't intending to be. He chuckled. I hope that's unbelievable in a good way. Honestly, it feels weird talking to you normally instead of like a child. I still struggle to believe you're this big. Well, it's true, I'm really here. I'm just gonna laugh. A smirk grew wider on his face as he put the first shoe down and picked up another, though he ultimately returned that one to the display again as well. Nicholas gestured with his hands for you to come as he turned away more. He walked back to the center of the tiny space from where it was easy for his older brothers to spot him. Derek and George waded through the merchandise, pressing in from all sides, almost knocking a few things over on the way. It was a rough place to be for a couple of large adult men, but they didn't have to worry about that for long. I'm done with this, he announced with a shrug. Nico hadn't got anything. He only wanted to satisfy his curiosity. You can go someplace else now. Let's go to the bookstore. The four of you filed into the large bookstore and began to drift around it. It was one of the most spacious shops in the mall. George went down the very first aisle of books and you walked with him. He was focused enough that he had been searching for something, but there was no way to tell what was on his mind. You quietly browsed alongside him. So have you started seeing anyone since starting college? That's what the fuck. What's your major? I don't think you've mentioned it. Are things going well in school? How have you been doing? We're just gonna be quiet. I don't want to be all up in his business because we don't talk like that. The comfortable silence was ended for a brief minute thanks to the question from George. How's Liz doing? Oh, she's great. The two of you kept pursuing her using like nothing happened. His smile had grown just a bit more. The books didn't hold Nico or Derek's attention as long as George's. While he remained in one section and considered each title on the shelf, his brothers skipped along row to row after getting only Cursory glances to the specifics. With a bit of distance between himself and his family, George took the opportunity to have a more private conversation with you personally. His quiet voice and being walled and by the books made you feel as if you were in a library rather than a mall.
Glad.
I'm glad you're back, Nori. That floored you. Not that you found it unbelievable, but you expected that to be a forever unspoken affection. George admitting it so directly was massive for you. You smiled shyly at him. I'm happy to be here. There's no way I wouldn't come to see you sooner or later. I couldn't stay away. It's good to be back. We're just gonna smile. You simply returned to shopping as happily as could be. You felt much lighter yourself. George ended up finding a newly released thriller that sounded interesting. He purchased it, then went to find his siblings. Nicholas and Derek had held it up in the graphic novel and manga aisle. They looked up at you and George approached. They grinned after seeing the bag under George's arm. I'm finished. Thanks for coming with me. But no. The game store. That's where I would go. Derek confidently strode into the local game shop with his younger brothers flanking his sides. The other three glanced around eagerly, then split up in different directions around the single room. He followed Derek towards the front right wall. Excuse me. My bad. While George and Nicholas went to the back corners, he bounced up and down on the pads of his feet like a kid in a candy store. We should totally get something. Sure, what console do you have? None. Not right now, at least. Wow. A conspiratorial gleam shone in his shifting green eyes. While watching his back, Derek inclined his face closer to yours, put a hand to the side of his face, and shared his real plan with you. I'm gonna convince Nico to let us borrow his Switch. I know he got one last year for himself, but what I don't know is all the games he owns.
Awesome.
It's no longer a problem now. We could pick out whatever we want here. Something we can play together. Aww. Oh, we'll need an extra controller too. He chattered along with the poorly restrained excitement, smiling sweetly as you did. Derek could have gotten a digital download he could have of a game instead, but there was no need to spoil the fun of picking it out in a real store. Derek, let's race. We can find a party game. Let's see what fighting games, sports, shooter, puzzle, platformer. Let's play a party game. Alright. The two of you worked as a team to score through the library of Switch games for the right genre with multiplayer compatibility. A few contenders appeared and you had a mini group huddled to come to a final decision. Derek had the case high like a prize and it was marched towards the register. You plucked a refurbished controller off the wall and followed after him. Derek clapped the case against the counter with as much gumption as someone playing a winning hand in cards. He chuckled at his own dramatics. When you had to awkwardly slide the controller he had forgotten alongside the game. Thanks, Nori. No problem. Our multiplayer excursion would have been pretty short without it. Nicholas couldn't go too long without checking in on his big brother's activity. He spotted the two of you at the register. Seeing it was a game for the Switch, he nodded happily. The team was blissfully unaware of Derek's true intentions without buying for that console. Derek played it cool and paid for the game and the controller. He didn't even look at his little brother until the deal was done and he had secured the bag. Then Derek flipped around confidently. Mission accomplished. Let's hit the next shop. Together, you stopped in the clothing store. You checked over the offering available. Most of it was stuff you could get anywhere else, but there was some decent sales going on. You were able to pick out one thing you wanted to buy. The Saras brothers gave approving thumbs up on your selection. They stuck beside you as you checked out, and finished up your turn. Okay. We've had some good stats, so it's getting late. We gotta go home now. Nicholas genuinely accepted the end of the trip. Fine. Thanks for bringing us to this old place. A warmth came to his voice as he concluded his statement. It's cool that we gotta hang out together. The sweetness brought a huge grin to Derek's face. He placed a hand on Nicholas's head, and he'd done for many years. I'm glad we did this too. Nicholas beamed at those words. The only thing better than having fun with his family was knowing that his family was having fun with him too. In high spirits, he slipped out from under Derek's hold and threw an arm over George's shoulder. The middle brother linked his own hand around Nico. The affection between all three of them only had grown stronger as the years had gone by. Everyone ambled towards the exit, feeling fulfilled as you approached the door. George began to speak. Did anyone else notice Derek won the bet? About half the stores he mentioned were real in there. Yeah, that's right. Nicholas stuck out a peace sign and cheered victoriously. Despite having not won himself, something even better had happened. Obviously, if Derek wasn't right about all the stores he talked about, then he'd be right about how many stores he'd be right about. Derek shook his head with a laugh at an exaggerated description from his biggest fan. Thanks for believing in me. Always, bro. You happily watched the brothers. The game was rigged. You jokingly complained, congratulations, Derek, you nailed it. Boo. Derek's right all the time. We just happily watch them. Let them banter. It was always a nice time when you all got together. All the loose threads had been tied up and you left them all behind. You got back in the shotgun seat and strapped in the driver in for the drive back to the Suarez's home. When everyone was set, you were on your way. It was a peaceful ride, mostly quiet. After a long excursion out, a rest was in order, but it only lasted for the first leg of the trip. Eventually, the soothing rumble of the car was harmonized with the gentle sounds of Nicholas humming joyfully to himself, and only a second later that was followed by a heat-wrenching gasp. The eldest brother instantly stiffened in his seat.
What's up?
What's up, Nicholas? My Eclair, it's disgusting. The Eclair? He ran that piece of information through his mind. The facts of the situation clicked into place. It melted. Nicholas whined at the tragedy of it all. Derek was right again, and he let out a nervous chuckle. What did you think would happen? It's a cream-filled dessert that's been sitting for hours in a locked car during the summer. I didn't think anything. It just happened.
It's a bummer.
I figured you were going to eat it on the way to the mall. I forgot about it. There were plenty of questions and comments coming from both his brothers, but there was little Nicholas could say in defense. He twisted in your seat to check on the youngest. The sight was pitiful. He was slouched in his seat, gazing down in the box full of regrets. The suffering couldn't be ignored. George was compelled to offer a solution to protect Nico from the consequences of his actions. You can have mine, it's still fine. It's a little soft, but warm muffins are good. Nicholas tucked his knees up and gripped the box more tightly anew. Desert sadly couldn't undo what's been done. I don't want that. I run mine. It's inedible. The sulminous brewing in the back seat was cracked by a bold declaration from the very front. I doubt that. Pass it over. That snapped Nicholas to attention. He was boggled by his brother. He wasn't hard to imagine why. Derek didn't enjoy treats on a normal day, and that one in particular was in a sorry state. But it was even easier to guess the reason of all. That didn't matter. Derek could stomach anything for his baby brother. He continued to coax Nicholas. I was going to try to get some of your dessert. That's the reason I didn't get my own. If you're not going to have any, that makes it even better for my plans. Nicholas wasn't a 6-year-old anymore. He knew a placating stunt when he saw one. He that Derek and his pouty resistance, trying to brush the whole attempt off. Yet Derek had grown in that time as well. He hadn't lost his knack at tending to his baby brothers. Even if it took more effort, he pretended to be oblivious to the rejection. Nora, could you get me the box? There was a groan and a sliding, shuffling sound. Nicholas had shoved the box through the opening between the driver's seat and shotgun. Just like the guessing game, he wasn't going to win this. Okay. You took the Zake box from Nicholas and brought it up to the front. The lid was already open and you got a peek at the Eclair puddle. It was only about half as tall as it had been originally. The structure of the filled treat had collapsed on itself. The paper doily underneath was entirely coated in liquefied chocolate frosting and pastry cream. You held the Eclair out towards Derek. You lifted the box towards Derek. You inched the Eclair box towards Derek, held Derek's head, towards Derek's head. He caught sight of it in his peripheral. Thanks, Nori. Reaching aside with one hand, Derek pinched the treat between his fingers. It was threatening to completely fall apart in his hand, but he still went for it and pulled it up in the air. His eyes stayed on the road and he turned his head over so slightly to reach for the treat. He didn't waste any time taking a large bite as he could manage. He barely seemed to chew it before he swallowed. He wasn't bad. Not too sweet. I'm honestly impressed. Xavier is a damn good baker. He plopped the sloppy pile right back down in the box. You continued to hold it up for him. It landed on the dolly with a squelch. He brought the box to your lap as Derek rooted around the cavity of the console to grab a napkin. A single paper napkin could only do so much against the ooze of his hands. He had to give up and put his sticky hand back on the wheel. Just another price he was willing to pay to cheer up Nico. You did your part for Nico and ate a part of it yourself. You took a bite of your own. Derek made it seem tempting. You asked to eat some for Nico's sake. You asked to try it. Derek made it seem tempting. We're gonna ask.
What?
You too? Nico scrunched his face, instinctively bristling. You nodded honestly with no hidden motives. His eyes drifted, heading towards a roll, but he stopped partway to instead close them and smile ruefully. Yeah, you can. Thanks. Your fingers sunk into the sides of the overheated pastry with no resistance. They were immediately covered in sticky ooze bleeding out from the side. There was no way to do what you wanted to do without getting messy, but it was the path you'd chosen. You made your best attempt to avoid having the car suffer the same fate as your hands as you inched the Eclair towards your mouth. You managed to get a satisfyingly squishy chomp. The texture was miles away from what an Eclair should be, but it still had very good flavor. Derek wasn't kidding when he praised Xavier's skills. Feeling a little fuller and more satisfied, You set what remainder of the eclair down and returned the dessert to its original owner. He poked at the remnants inside after all that. He couldn't help himself. He scooped some of the mushy mess out and gave it an exploratory taste. Nico grimaced as soon as it hit his tongue, and he let out a heavy sigh when it swallowed it down. Pretty gross. As true as that was, there was a breathy chuckle threaded in his words. Not so long ago he had been as droopy as the eclair itself. Now he was starting to perk up. There was one person left who didn't take part in the event. He stayed quiet no longer. Could I try too? Totally, it's all yours. The box was I don't know how to say it, dumped onto George's legs. He awkwardly grabbed it to keep it from falling onto the floor. George gave a snort. I'll mention it. There was a decent amount left. It was quite lengthy type of confection. For Nicholas, it would have been at least 2 bites. George, however, was able to stuff the remainder of the confection in his face, and just like that, it was gone. Nicholas barked louder and clearer than before. Well, I did say it was yours. Thanks to the team effort, none of the eclair went to waste, so soggy clouds remained over anyone's head. Does anyone want to try my raspberry lemon cake? Now, who wants some of my raspberry lemon cake? You decide not to eat your treat after that. We decided not to eat it. We want to eat dinner. Your raspberry lemon cake had to be just as annihilated by the heat as Nico's eclair was. The trip home came with good moods all around, and soon you'd reach your destination. Nicholas and George jumped out of the car right away, and Derek took a second to gather up the gift he had gotten for his father. You followed along after the boys. Nicholas let you right in with his house key. As he swung the door open, he announced the group's arrival with a grand cheer. We're back. Welcome home. His mother and father returned the call with a familiar greeting of his own. They had been taking it easy on the couch with the TV, but it was promptly shut off with a click of the remote. Their children were entertainment enough. You, Derek, and George stood around in the front of the living room. Sarah's child number 3 skipped ahead, going all the way around the back of the couch. Nicholas draped himself over his dad's shoulders and snuggled up from behind. Happy Father's Day. Mr. Saras reached up to clasp Nico's arms warmly. Thank you, my wonderful son. The well wishes were echoed by the older 2 brothers in unison. Happy Father's Day, Dad. Thank you as well. You stood shyly, you waved sweetly, a happy day to my favorite dad around. Happy Father's Day, happy Daddy Day. Happy Father's Day, Mr. Saras. We waved sweetly. It felt totally natural to join in on the merry making yourself. The content smile of Mr. Saras' face confirmed that. The man of the hour struggled to get off the cushion with the heavy cape still hanging over him, but lifting Nicholas along with him, Mr. Saras managed to get up on his feet. In order to keep clinging to his parent, Nicholas had to stretch his chest over the seats of the couch and lean over on his tiptoes. That was all well and good with Mr. Saras. He opened his arms wide to invite even more hangers to join in. The incredibly inconvenient positioning was no holdup for his children. Derek and George shuffled in between the coffee table and their dad, carefully arranging themselves around each other and Nico. The group came together like pieces of a puzzle, only being able to attach in a specific perfectly aligned slots. You smiled at the sweet scene. You waited to hug him after his family was done. You joined in. You smiled at the sweet scene. I'm not gonna hug him. That's weird. Mr. Saras relished being embraced from all sides. You could hear a muffled rumbling laugh coming from the mass of Saras men. Mrs. Saras had a front row seat to all the love fest. She couldn't possibly move from her spot on the couch with 2 large sons blocking the way. Their mom sat tight and even managed to squeeze in one hand to rub her husband's lower back. All the love in the world being poured over Mr. Saras, and him flushed with pride, he spoke to his loving family with as much affection for them as they had for him. I'm so grateful to have you all here.
No problem.
Glad to be here. Yeah, I'm glad to be here too. Nico chirped, a self-aware mimic of his big brother. What they said. You grinned, glad to be here. What they said times 2. What they said times 2. That comment was the cherry on a silly Sunday. The brothers snickered along with you. The bonding moment came to a sudden abrupt end as Nicholas' grip finally slipped from his dad's neck. He collapsed like a broken bridge and swung face towards into the backrest of the couch with a puffing gasp. His long hair spilled over everywhere. Are you fine, Nicholas? Mr. Saras craned his head over his shoulder to peer down at where his youngest child landed. Still flat against the pillow, Nicholas stuck a thumb in the air. That drew out snickers from the whole crowd, but it was mutually agreed that giving each other somewhat space was for the best. The Saras mid shimmied away one after another past the furniture and into the dining area. The last one in the pack was Nicholas, who finally pulled himself upright. The missus of the family left the couch behind as well. It was a full migration to the open area of the living room. The flow of the conversation continued from there.
You okay?
How's your day been? Derek clapped a hand on the back on his father's shoulder. What were you up to while we were out? With great excitement, Mr. Suarez answered the question. I took a nap. That's cool, Dad. It is. I hope the four of you had a pleasant afternoon as well. We had fun. It was a wonderful time of both old and new locals. George and Derek both nodded, not needing to add more to that.
That's what I like to hear.
Good to hear it. More current experience was shared. Funny, I don't know what the word, we're told stories seen lately were recounted. It was low-key, it was a low-key celebration. All that was needed to make the day was spending time all together. With a clear clap of her hands, Mrs. Suarez called the group to attention. Her eyes were squinted up from her smile-raised cheeks.
So,
Before it gets any later, how about we give Dad his gifts? Mr. Suarez had been patient. He waited for someone else to bring up the topic. Now that his wife had, the dam holding back swirling excitement rushed open.
Yes.
Yes, I'd like my gifts now. Let's do it. I'll be right back. I hid my gifts in Nico's room.
Yeah.
Oh, sure, we can wait. But not long. That was tacked on to Derek's statement. Humoredly, though not entirely as a joke.
Don't worry.
I got it. George flippantly gestured a hand over his shoulder, dismissing his dad's impatience, but the speed he walked at was brisker than a normal indoor pace. Derek's hand automatically came to rest over his pocket. He patted the box safely tucked inside. Why George had to stick the gift inside someone else's bedroom became all too obvious when he re-entered the hall. A bouquet of beautiful flowers was spilling over the enormous cradle around it, all wrapped up in a pretty bow. Ooh, it was fitting choice. A thrilled smile bloomed over the recipient's face. The middle son clutched the bouquet closer to his chest. A few petals brushed against his cheek. Sorry I couldn't get this into a bag, so here it is. Everyone knows what I got. And it's beautiful. Thank you, Junior. Right, it's cool. You deserve to go first for a change, and I can live being second. If George had been worried about stepping on anyone's toes, those fears would have been completely assuaged. I don't know. But that wasn't his concern. As Derek chuckled, George shook his head. For a change, Derek, you let me go before you You let me go before you more than often than you go first. Derek had another answer ready without missing a beat, and he laughed even more. Then we're keeping up the tradition. And this is for you, Dad. Derek brought out a sleek package and held it out for the taking. Mr. Suarez plucked it up gladly. He tucked the bouquet under his elbow while pulling off the top of his new present. A tie. I will use this often. Thank you, Derek. Mrs. Suarez rubbed Derek's back, watching her husband admire the accessory. That will look great on your new shirt that I got him. She winked knowingly and headed off the questions the statement might bring. I let him open that one earlier so we didn't have to wait all day before the presents happened. No wonder he'd been so well behaved. He'd been preemptively mollified. Mr. Suarez whistled innocently, shuffling around the tie in its box. Thank you again, my loving wife. He was fully basking in I don't know. Meanwhile, his supportive partner took the initiative to bring out a vase for George's flowers. They look even better, fully spread out in the glass. As usual, the last person to take the stage was Nicholas, with a wide sweeping of his arms.
This is my wonderful presents.
Of course.
And it is wonderful indeed. It was no joke. Mr. Suarez looked upon Nico warmingly. The temptation to baby the baby of the family was too strong. From the sidelines, the three of the members of the family exchanged shrugs and weary smiles. After the highest point of excitement with the gift-giving, the casual get-together wound down even more. You, the trio of the Suarez brothers and their father, were all settled around the dinner table shooting the breeze. Mrs. Suarez had reclaimed her comfortable spot on the couch. There was a book in her hand. Her second gift of the day was letting Mr. Suarez keep all the attention of the children. He spoke animatedly about his life, his work. The line of the topic in particular got him going. It was explained that himself and Mr. Holden had been invited to a business owner networking lunch happening the next day.
Well then.
You see, Mr. Holden has a dislike for such events. In our years as partners, he had gone without saying that I am the one who attends. Although, Mr. Suarez gave a toothy grin. He was up to something. There's another option this time. I could have my responsible son attend as my representative. He could only stare in a wide-eyed amazement. It suddenly felt like it was Derek's birthday rather than Father's Day. You could still remember when Derek, helping his dad with his business as an equal, was just far-off imagination, a fanciful thought for someday, and now you weren't present and it was a reality. It had sent Derek off into the clouds temporarily, but it wasn't a dream or a joke. It was an actual situation he was present in. Derek gathered his thoughts and gave in a grounded response. Sorry, I got plans tomorrow. That's understandable. Derek Suarez is in demand by all You know him. Well, not by everyone. Derek snickered shyly, and it seemed the exchange was already reaching its conclusion. You knew that. You knew what that was. Supersetting plan of Derek's was going to the water park with you. You weren't sure what to think about the situation. You got Derek's attention to talk. You had passed on helping his dad to hang out with you. It made you happy. You were so looking forward to it. You had passed on helping his dad to hang out. Yeah. This time you were going to spend together was important to him, and he respected you enough to not drop the ball when something else came along. With a complete confidence, Derek jumped back into the conversation he was momentarily left behind for you. As I was saying, thanks for understanding. I'll make it up to you next time.
That is all right.
It is all well. You're already so successful and talented. I need to work hard to keep up. After years of hard work, Derek had earned so much praise from his dad, yet he didn't accept it with beaming pride or even downplay it with a lighthearted humbleness. He simply rejected it. Hardly. Something had changed. He wasn't a small teenager who could only guess what it meant to be an adult and believe what he was told. Derek had grown. He had lived experiences that words could be compared to. What he felt he had done did not match with what his father was describing. But you had but you had to wonder why. There wasn't anyone you thought was more deserving on the terms talented and successful. No good reason came to mind. Despite Derek never looking more mature, Mr. Suarez smiled confidently like he did when his son was still young. It wasn't a gesture lost of Derek. He once again showed that he was not a child. It was Father's Day, not the moment to worry his dad. He winked, smirked, and managed to smooth over the bump. You're still way ahead of me. And that was the end of that. Later in the evening, a hearty homemade dinner was served as the final event of the occasion, but eventually George stood up from the chair he explained he needed to start heading back to his dorm. It only made sense for you and Derek to take your own leave too. The permanent occupants of the house, Nicholas, Mr. Suarez, and Mrs. Suarez, thanked everyone for coming. One last set of Father's Day well wishes were given, farewell were exchanged, and then it was time to go on your separate ways. As usual, Derek grabbed the door first and held it open for George and you. You thanked him while you went through. His parents and the youngest brother stood by in the living room the entire time. Derek called out over his shoulder with the last note of the day's gathering.
Talk to you later.
Have a hell of a day, everybody. Thanks for letting us be here. And then he followed you and shut the door behind him. As soon as you had both climbed into the comfortable seats of Derek's car, he was ready for a new adventure. What's the plan now? We've got what's left of the day to ourselves. I'm not sure. You intended to really consider the question, but not a single thought had changed to fully form before Derek sent disconnect mental threads flying a shot. I have to send the text real quick. Oh shoot. Hold on, guys. Okay. What's wrong? His head knocked against the back of the seat. He slid lower in defeat. I didn't get the console from Nico. That's what we could have done, obviously. We'd already set everything up, almost everything. Derek offered an apologetic grin. Hey, it's not as if I remembered. That does make it less embarrassing for me. Thanks, Nori. You're welcome. I mean, we can always go back in. He scraped himself up off the chair, choosing to lean over the steering wheel instead. Another day, then. It'd be way too awkward to go back up there and beg Nicholas for a switch. That's something we gotta play smooth. But without it, there's not much to do in the apartment. Words drifted off. His mind was working, and without another interruption, yours was as well. The loudest sound in the cabin of the still car was Derek drumming his fingers against the steering wheel. What did you want to do? That was the question. At the starting point, it was worth considering not just what to do in general, but what you could do while you were there in a location. Excuse me. That location, of course, you couldn't be far from the big park your mom sometimes took you to, the same place Derek frequented with his brothers. Let's go to the park. And we're gonna cut it off right there because I feel like it's been a good majority of time of reading. I will get with you guys later. Thanks for listening.